Hello everyone, I'm Alex Dykes, and on today's episode of Alex and Autos, we're out here taking a look at the 2015 and a half Volvo XC60. You're probably wondering why 2015 and a half, because back in 2015, we got a new set of engines under the hood for the Volvo. What does 2015 and a half bring? Well, it actually brings an entire new set of infotainment systems as well. The XC60 was originally launched in Europe for 2009 and in the United States for 2010. Since then, we have new headlights, new front bumpers, new rear bumpers, new seats, new dashboard, new engines, new transmissions, new instrument cluster, new infotainment system, new steering wheel, and a whole bunch of other new stuff under the hood and on the inside of the vehicle. So if you were crossover shopping for an XC60 5 years ago and you're crossing the XC60 off your list because you don't think it's fresh, then you may want to give it another look and watch to the end of this video. When Volvo refreshed the XC60's front bumper, they decided to remove the front fog lamps, and they also moved the LED daytime running lamps from up here down to down here in the bumper. Now the standard headlamps in the XC60 are halogen headlamps, and that's in the base model. Most of the models, however, that I've seen on dealer lots do have these optional HID headlamps. They are standard on the T6 models. Volvo's HID headlamps are projector-style HID headlamps, and when you engage the high beams in the vehicle, it alters the beam pattern of the HID headlamp. In addition to that, we also have a halogen high beam lamp over here that gives you some extra auxiliary light. The combination of the two makes these one of the best headlamps that I've seen in recent time. And helping make these some of my favorite headlamps for the 2015 model year are the fact that these also steer a great deal more than most other manufacturers' headlamps out there. Some people find that a little bit distracting, but if you live out in the country, especially on really winding mountain roads, then you'll definitely find that an advantage. With this bumper redesign, Volvo has relocated their radar cruise control sensor right over here, and they've integrated it a little bit better with the grille. When the XC60 was first launched, this was one of the larger vehicles in its segment. Today, however, a lot of the competition has grown, and we expect the 2016 Audi Q5 to grow even further. As such, the XC60 now slots in towards the bottom end of this particular segment in terms of overall exterior dimensions. However, thanks to this decidedly front-wheel drive profile we have going on here, you'll notice we have a shorter hood than you'll find in something like a BMW X3. That means that we have a little bit more room on the inside than you'll find in those rear-wheel drive competitors like the X3 and the GLK. One interesting thing about the XC60 is that even though this is a crossover vehicle, it's not a traditional body-on-frame SUV, and it's really not oriented towards off-roading necessarily, we do have approach and departure angles that are a little bit better than you'll find on most of the competition. That's the angle right back here. And we also have a higher ground clearance than you'll find in many of these crossovers in the luxury segment. Out back, the XC60 continues this very distinctive Volvo hip going on right here. Some have also said it looks like a bell to them. It's a very attractive design in my mind. It has definitely been replicated by a number of other manufacturers out there. As you'd expect from a luxury vehicle, we have a tasteful amount of chrome going on right back here, very well integrated parking sensors, and then right down here at the bottom we have the rear fog lights. There's one on either side of the vehicle. Now, some people have described the XC60 as a little bit plain, a little bit nondescript, but I would say that the XC60 is actually quite Scandinavian. The Scandinavians do like very clean lines, very simple styling in general. We do have this very sexy hip arrangement going back here, these very attractive tail lamps, but I do have to admit that the front end is a little bit sedate. However, all things told, I still give this 9 out of 10 points when it comes to my exterior style score. I actually find these looks a little bit more appealing to my personal eye than many of the other entries in this segment. Now, under the hood, there is definitely something for everyone in the XC60. There are no less than 4 different engines and 2 different versions of one of those engines. Things start out with the front-wheel drive T5 model that uses a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine. It's a brand new engine for Volvo. It produces 240 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. Now, it does have an overboost feature as well, and it will boost that torque up to 280 pound-feet of torque for a limited duration. The next front-wheel drive model is the front-wheel drive T6 model, and that takes that same basic engine and adds a supercharger. It doesn't remove the turbo, however. That is both a turbocharged and supercharged engine. The supercharger gives you good low-end performance, and the turbocharger gives you good high-end performance. That's why they mix the two together. That bumps the power up to a whopping 302 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. Now, both of those front-wheel drive engines are mated to a standard 8-speed automatic transmission. It's essentially the same transmission that you'll find under the hood of the Lexus RX 350 F Sport. Now, when you add all-wheel drive, things get a little bit confusing, because even though we still have the T5 and T6 models, we get completely different engines under the hood. These are actually revised versions of the last generation Volvo engine family. The T5 gets a 2.5-liter 5-cylinder engine. It produces 250 horsepower and 266 pound-feet of torque. Now, that engine does have an overboost feature as well, and it will send torque up to 295 pound-feet of torque for a limited duration. The T6 model that we're taking a look at right here has a 3-liter 6-cylinder turbocharged engine. I'll remove this cover so you can see it. This produces 300 horsepower and 325 pound-feet of torque. This is very similar in terms of power output to BMW's 3-liter 6-cylinder engine in the BMW X3. Now there's also a different version of this same basic 3-liter engine, and that's the T6 R-Design model that will crank this engine up to 325 horsepower and 354 pound-feet of torque. Now, all the all-wheel drive models are mated to a 6-speed automatic transmission and a Haldex all-wheel drive system, which can send up to 50% of the power to the rear, assuming no wheel slippage at any point. And when it comes to fuel economy, the 2.0-liter Drive E, which is the front-wheel drive version, is one of the best in this segment. It gets 24 miles per gallon city, 31 highway, and 27 miles per gallon. That's thanks to that new engine design, the 8-speed automatic transmission, and a standard start-stop system. If you get the T6 all-wheel drive or the T6 all-wheel drive R-Design model, then fuel economy comes in slightly below average for this segment at 17 miles per gallon city, 24 highway, and 20 combined. The most interesting takeaway for the fuel economy numbers right over there on that side of your screen is the T6 front-wheel drive model, because for 302 horsepower, that model still gets 30 miles per gallon highway, and it really doesn't have that much of a reduction in terms of fuel economy versus that base 2.0-liter 240 horsepower engine. Now, if you plan on towing with your compact luxury crossover, you'll be happy to know that the XC60 is rated for 3,500 pounds of towing capacity, whether you get the front-wheel drive or the all-wheel drive version, and whether you get the T6 or the T5 engine. Front seat comfort comes in at 10 out of 10 points. The XC60's front seats are easily the most comfortable in this segment. Volvo is typically known for very comfortable front seats, and that continues in this vehicle. However, these are not as adjustable as some of those other entries in this segment, so that is something to keep in mind. The lumbar support is only a 2-way lumbar support, and it is manual. It's a knob right over here on the right side of the seat for the driver, on the left side of the seat for the front passenger. That means we only get 8 ways as far as power motion goes, but we do get a 3-position memory. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that Volvo likes fixed headrests because they say that most people don't properly adjust their headrest in their car anyway. So these are always fixed into position, and you want to make sure that they're comfortable for you before you buy the car. Now, even though those headrests are fixed, they are designed to accommodate a wide variety of different driver and passenger heights. The same thing goes for this tilt telescopic steering column. It has a wide range of motion, and it comes out a lot further from the dashboard than many of those other vehicles. When it comes to rear seat comfort, I give this 9 out of 10 points. The XC60 has very, very comfortable rear seats, but we don't have quite as much legroom as you'll find, especially in the half-step-up larger Lexus RX, Cadillac SRX, or Lincoln MKX. Now, while you won't find reclining rear seats, we do have an incredible amount of headroom. I have about 3 inches of headroom back here in this second row seat, and we are in the panoramic sunroof equipped model, which does have a little bit of an impact on rear headroom. Now, that generous headroom means that moving on over here to the middle seat, I can sit upright and my hair isn't even brushing the ceiling. Now, moving all the way over to the right seat in the vehicle, my knees are almost touching the seat back because this front seat was adjusted for a 6'5" passenger, but I can still sit very comfortably back here, and more importantly, I could do this even for a road trip with a taller person up front. Rear passengers do get a wide center armrest with large cup holders right over here that fold out, and a storage cubby. Now, the XC60 employs 40-20-40 folding seats, so this 20 section of the seat folds, and it actually also folds with this 60 portion of the seat. So it folds with that section right there, or it can fold independently of that other section. Now, when you do fold down these rear seats, they do fold completely flat with the rear cargo area, meaning it's a lot easier to put long cargo in this vehicle. The XC60 that we're taking a look at here has the optional child booster seats. They pop right out of the seat bottom cushion like that. If you want to know more about the booster cushion, then go ahead and click on over to the child seat video on the XC60. Now, these seats are designed to accommodate children between 37 and 55 inches tall and between 35 and 80 pounds, depending on what your child needs as far as booster seats go. When it comes to cargo capacity, the XC60 scores very well, and that's thanks to some of the efficiencies of being a front-wheel drive based product. Right here I have 2 large roller bags, and you can see these very easily fit back here in the cargo area in a wide variety of different stances. And thanks to the rear cargo hatch that is a little bit more vertical than you'll find in some of the entries, you can put a lot more square items in this cargo area. Now, no Volvo would be complete without a wide variety of different cargo carrying features. That's going on here. We have this divider that pops up from the trunk, so you can put your cargo in there and have it not roll around. You can definitely put a 24-inch roller bag in there like that. It's not quite enough room to put it in that orientation and have the tailgate closed. However, you can put them upright. We also have an elastic strap, so you can put paper grocery bags right back here and hold them into place, and then plastic grocery bag holders right up here. If we close that lid, we have cargo tie downs on the sides right over there. We have a 12-volt power outlet back here, and if we lift up this area, you will find some additional cargo storage. I have a little hook to help hold that in place right up there. Now, if you lift up this, you will still find a spare tire in our particular model. When it comes to my exclusive trunk comfort index, I'll give this 9 out of 10 points. We do have an awful lot of cargo practicality features back here, as well as that 40-20-40 folding seat, which really help improve that score. Now you will find more cargo room in the back of a Lexus RX, a Cadillac SRX, or a Lincoln MKX than you'll find in the XC60. However, this still does very well for itself. We have a very practical and very sturdy grab handle right here to help you close the cargo area lid, and we also have an optional power tailgate. Taking a quick look around the interior, we have these fixed headrests that I mentioned earlier. Again, they do not move forwards or backwards or up or down. Right over here, we have kind of an interesting twist on height adjustable seatbelts. This is sort of a height adjustable all the time seatbelt. So you pull the seatbelt out and you let it back in right there on the top of the slot, and it stays up there on top. Now, if you want it lower, you pull it all the way out and you let it in lower in the slot, and it will stay coming out lower in the slot. Now moving over to the front door panel, we have almost entirely soft touch plastics, except for this small opening right here in the door, which is a storage cubby and bottle holder. Taking a look at the corner of the front door, you'll notice we have our blind spot information light right there and a tweeter, and if we zoom out, you can see the general design of the dashboard. Moving fully over to the dashboard, we have a soft touch injection molded upper dashboard, hard touch plastics lower in the dashboard right there, and we have a very large glove box right in there with an additional shelf, 2 pen holders right there. I had no problem putting an iPad or other large tablet computer right inside. If you'd like to take your interior to the next level, Volvo does offer, as part of a package option, a full leather dashboard, and this is a completely stitched leather dashboard unit. I'll insert a picture right here so you can see what that looks like. Now right over here in the center, we have a 7-inch high-resolution color LCD screen. This is definitely smaller than you'll find, especially in the BMW X3, but it's about the same size as you'll find in the Mercedes and the Audi at the moment. Now Volvo has significantly refreshed their Sensus infotainment system, now calling it Sensus Connect. We now have complete online services, like you can see right here. We have wiki locations. That's not the only service this provides. It also provides streaming radio like Pandora, Stitcher. We also have Glimpse and a few other applications that are integrated right into the software. Now, in addition to that, there is a smartphone app that will interact with the vehicle. It allows you to remote start the vehicle, check to see whether it's locked or unlocked, lock or unlock the doors remotely from anywhere with your smartphone. If you want to know more about that and about Sensus Connect, then go ahead and click at that banner at the bottom of your screen, and you'll be taken on over to our dedicated review of this Sensus Connect infotainment system. Below the screen of the dashboard, we have these 2 large air vents, a single slot optical disc player right here, and then we have our controls for our climate control system and that infotainment system. Moving down the dash, we have a very traditional Cobra head shifter, buttons on the back, pull it all the way down for drive, pull it over to the left for sport, and then we get manual mode up for up and down for down. Right behind that, we have 2 very large cup holders behind this little roller cover, and in between the cup holders is where you will find the 12-volt power port. Behind those cup holders, we have a fairly small center armrest right there. It opens to reveal a moderately sized cubby. Do have quite a lot jammed in there. You can also see where the lumbar support knob is on the driver and front passenger seat. Passenger side, it's on here. Driver's side, it's right over here. Moving over to the driver's side, our model has the optional LCD instrument cluster, as you can see right here. We do have some LED gauges right over here for the fuel economy on the left and the position of our transmission right over there on the right. If you opt for the base XC60, we have gauges that are relatively similar in terms of theme. We still have a very large central dial right here. I'll insert a picture so you can see what that looks like. Now, there are 3 different themes available with this display. We're taking a look at the performance theme right here. We can also get an eco theme, where we get a more traditional speedometer right over there in the center. And then we have a elegance theme as well, which is ever so slightly different. Same basic theme going on here. Centrally in the speedometer, we have all of our warning system information. So right here we can see whether we have radar cruise control on, what our following distance is going to be in front of that car. We also have speed limit information right over there on the right. If we put the car into drive and use the paddle shifters that are on the steering wheel, you'll notice we get a gear indicator right over there on the right-hand side of the screen. If we put this over into the performance theme, then we get a very large central digital speedometer, and then we get a tachometer in a ring right around that. Over here on the left-hand side, we get a cruise control display, or we can turn that off, and we get the engine temperature again. Now over here on the right-hand side of this, in the sport mode, we get this interesting little power gauge right over here. Basically tells you from 0 to 100% how much power you're using at any one moment. Moving out to the steering wheel, we have a 3-spoke steering wheel with very large, chunky sport grips on the bottom and right up here as well. Paddle shifters on the back, down on this side, up right over there on that side over there. We have our cruise control buttons over here. Since we have radar cruise control, we also have distance as well as speed and a resume button. Right over here, we have our volume up, down. We have a scroll knob that actually controls that infotainment screen right over there. Scrolls around and then clicks down to enter. Exit, voice command button, and track forward, backward buttons. The LCD instrument cluster is controlled with this turn signal stalk right over here. We have an OK button right there at the end right there. We have a little control wheel right there on this side, and then we have a reset button right over there. Moving up to the ceiling, we have our sunroof controls right over here, dome light and reading light controls. We also have the SOS button and the Volvo on-call button for the Volvo on-call system. You can summon help with the SOS button. Of course, we have a new rimless rearview mirror. I think Cadillac was the first manufacturer to introduce this style to the US. It's been slowly cropping through various manufacturers. And you'll notice right back here we have this enormous black plastic module right here. Let's talk about City Safety now. City Safety is Volvo's autonomous braking system, and it comes in two different flavors. The one that's included on all XC60 models sold in the United States will attempt to stop the car as long as you're traveling under 31 miles an hour and the system determines that the accident is unavoidable. So rather than some systems like Acura's system, which is a collision mitigating braking system that operates on all speeds and is rather aggressive in terms of its interaction with you, this system will only interact with the driver if it thinks that nothing else is possible to avoid the accident. Now the camera and the scanner are mounted in this pod, giving the car the same sort of view as the driver gets, pretty much what you're seeing right here. Now the car is tracking other cars traveling on the road and deciding whether their path is going to interact with your path. And if it decides that an accident is inevitable and there's no way to avoid it, it will jam on the brakes. Now the system is not necessarily designed to completely stop the car, although that is definitely its goal. It's trying to completely avoid the accident, but it will also mitigate accidents, so it will try and reduce the severity of that accident. Now the system is not guaranteed to be 100% effective, and it actually errs on the side of allowing you to hit whatever it is that you're traveling towards rather than trying to be too restrictive to the driver. Now the second version of City Safety you'll find in the vehicles equipped with the optional radar cruise control. Now the optional radar cruise control system integrates with City Safety and allows it to track pedestrians and cyclists on the road. It basically tracks their path, decides whether the vehicle is going to interact with the path of the pedestrian, and does the same sort of thing under 31 miles an hour, taking you to a complete stop. Now, no one was sure exactly how effective this system would be when Volvo launched it, and even though it will not always stop you and it will not always avoid that collision, it definitely has made a marked impact in the accident rates and accident statistics of the XC60. We can tell that because Volvos are the only models that have this kind of system standard in every model. Other manufacturers may have systems that are similar, but they're optional, so that does affect the statistics. If you take a look at the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety over at iihs.org, you can see the accident statistics for the XC60, and they are lower than the competition. Now, interestingly enough, out on the road, the XC60 is one of the most powerful crossovers in this segment. Volvo actually sells you 3 engines that are 300 horsepower or more. There's the 3-liter turbocharged 6-cylinder engine that's in the model we're taking a look at right here. We also have a 2-liter turbocharged and supercharged engine producing 302 horsepower, and then we have the R-Design producing 325 horsepower. Now, all that power is certainly noticeable out on the road. I give this 8 to 9 points out of 10 when it comes to the acceleration score. 8 out of 10 points if you get either of those T5 models. Now, the all-wheel drive model does have a little bit less loss, and it also has a 6-speed automatic transmission instead of the 8-speed that the T5 front-wheel drive model gets. However, acceleration time is roughly the same. 0 to 60 rang in at 6.15 seconds in this T6 all-wheel drive model that we're taking a look at right here, 6.1 seconds in the T6 front-wheel drive model. Even though we have a little bit less traction going on there, we have that 8-speed automatic transmission and just about as much power, which really has an advantage when it comes to acceleration. Now, if you opt for the R-Design model, that shockingly drops down to 5.7 seconds 0 to 60. That's within 1/10 of a second of the base Porsche Macan. This is a very, very swift SUV. Now, you may be asking yourself, why isn't the XC60 even faster because of all these high horsepower engine options? And the answer to that is all down to the curb weight. The XC60 is a fairly heavy crossover for this segment, especially when you take into account that this is one of the smaller vehicles now in terms of exterior dimensions. That high curb weight rather unfortunately reduces our braking score. I'll give this 7 out of 10 points. Braking distances were a little bit longer than I would have liked, and braking fade resistance was a little bit lower than I would have liked as well. This is still a very solid braking vehicle. It definitely feels very sure-footed when you're braking, but the distances are going to be longer than some of those lighter options out there. Now, when it comes to handling, I still give this model 8 out of 10 points, and that's because this is a very, very well-sorted vehicle in terms of suspension, steering, as well as handling all put together. Almost all models of the XC60 have wider tires than you'll find in the average entry in this segment. That really helps compensate for the fact that this is heavy, and it's also front heavy. Nearly 60% of the weight is over the front axle, and that is very different than something along the lines of a BMW X3 or a Mercedes-Benz GLK or the Porsche Macan, which are nearly perfectly balanced. Now, even taking into account the front-heavy nature of this vehicle, we do have excellent handling still out here on the road. This doesn't have a torque vectoring rear axle like you'll find in the Acura MDX, that would be the Acura's larger SUV, but it is very similar to what you'll find in pretty much every other entry in this segment, because Acura's RDX no longer has that torque vectoring rear axle either, so they're fairly comparable out on the road. However, in terms of absolute grip, the XC60, especially in R-Design, really tops any of the other front-wheel drive based vehicles in this segment. I would actually place this very close in terms of feel to Audi's Q5. They're very, very close to one another. That would be 1/2 step below the Mercedes-Benz GLK and the BMW X3, and of course that Porsche Macan. Now, when it comes to fuel economy, weight definitely affects the XC60. I'll give this particular vehicle 6 out of 10 points. It jumps up to 9 out of 10 points if you do get the new Drive E series of engines. And in case anybody was asking, that was a yield sign, not a stop sign. Now, if you get the Drive E engines in the Volvo XC60, that would be the front-wheel drive versions of the T5 and T6 only, then we do get absolutely excellent fuel economy, even in that 302 horsepower equipped model. In fact, the XC60 T5 with that Drive E engine is probably the most fuel-efficient gasoline vehicle in this segment if you're not looking at the hybrids. Now, that hybrid Lexus NX will get slightly better fuel economy, but out on the highway, it's not going to be that much better than the Volvo XC60 T5. You will get better fuel economy in some of the diesel entries in this segment, but diesel is going to be more expensive than gasoline. Now, when it comes to ride, I'll give this between 6 and 8 out of 10 points. The R-Design gets 6 out of 10 points. The other versions mostly get 8 out of 10 points. A lot of people mistakenly think that Volvo is a very soft, a very compliant ride in terms of their general profile for driving, and that's really not the case. Volvo is definitely a solid European player in this segment, and the ride is very similar to what you find out of BMW and Audi as well. Now, if you're looking for something softer, you would definitely need to go for one of the American players in this segment, like the Lincoln MKC or the Lexus NX. Those are definitely going to be softer than this Volvo XC60. When it comes to cabin noise, we rang in at 70 decibels at 50 miles an hour. That's a little bit louder than some of the other entries in this segment, but it is right there in the middle of the pack, and I'll give this 8 out of 10 points when it comes to cabin noise. Now, of course, no crossover in this luxury segment is a true off-road vehicle. Even that Range Rover Evoque is not really a true off-road vehicle. It doesn't have the same sort of off-road ability that you find in the rest of that Range Rover family. However, this Volvo XC60 is actually a little bit better than the average entry in this crossover segment because we have slightly more advantageous approach and departure angles, and Volvo has actually given this higher ground clearance than most of the other entries. Now, that's not too surprising when you take a look at the terrain in certain areas of Sweden, where they do have an awful lot of country roads like the road we're taking a look at right here, as well as an awful lot of gravel roads like the road that I live on. Now, this may not be something that a lot of city dwellers can relate to, but when you live out in the country like I do, out on roads like this, out in the forest, you can find yourself on your way to work and have a branch across the road, and your choices are get out and deal with it or drive over it. Now, that's where the XC60 is a little bit different than some of the other entries, because the XC60 could drive over that branch, whereas some of the other entries out there, especially along the lines of a BMW X1, you'd have to get out and move the branch. Pricing for the XC60 is relatively straightforward as far as base prices go. Now, if you get the front-wheel drive version, that will start at $36,200 for the T5 Drive E engine. If you get the T6 front-wheel drive model, that's $40,900. If you want the T5 all-wheel drive model, that starts at $37,700. Again, that has a different engine than the T5 front-wheel drive model. If you want the T6 all-wheel drive model that we're taking a look at here, it starts at $42,400. Our model here is almost fully loaded, and it rang in at $51,000. If you want to pull out all the sport stops, then you can get the R-Design model, and that will start at $46,650. That is by far the sportiest version of the XC60. Now, when you're taking a look at that pricing, it's important to keep in mind that the T5 models start with cloth seats and halogen headlamps, and the Premier package is standard on T6 models. That's optional on the T5 models. Now, that $3,200 option package on the T5 will add leather, the panoramic moonroof, auto-dimming mirrors, navigation with the online services, the LCD instrument cluster, as well as tinted windows and a few other features. As a result, I think the T6 is a great buy any way you slice it, because in addition to all that additional feature content, you also get a great deal more power, and it doesn't really cost you a whole lot. We then have the Platinum option, which is $4,400 extra on the T6, and it builds on that last package in the T5. That will give you the power tailgate that we've been taking a look at, the backup camera, these xenon steering headlamps, active high beams, premium sound, lane departure warning, the adaptive cruise control that we're taking a look at right here, with pedestrian and cyclist detection, as well as collision warning. For $2,300, you can get the Inscription package, which gets you upgraded leather on the inside, as well as that stitched leather dashboard. That's definitely an option that I would select. It really dresses up the interior a great deal. and a great deal more than you'll find in most of the other entries in this segment, because stitched leather dashboards are still pretty rare at this end of the luxury spectrum. There's also a $1,550 climate package, which is an option that you may want to consider if you live in a very cold climate. It includes heated seats, which can be had on their own, and that's heated seats for both the front and the rear, and a heated steering wheel, but that's not what's interesting about the package. What's interesting about the package is we actually have a windshield de-icer grid built into the windshield in that package. And pretty much just Land Rover and Volvo are the only two companies that are giving you that optional feature in the United States at this time. The tricky thing when it comes to price comparing the XC60 against the rest of the competition is that this is the only vehicle that has a standard autonomous braking system, Volvo City Safety. It's difficult to put a price tag on that city safety system, so depending on how you price it, this could be a better value than the Q5, or maybe not, depending on whether or not you are after that option. Let's start out our comparisons with the Lincoln MKC, which is the new kid on the block. The Volvo is $300 more expensive. It's also a little bit bigger. Strangely enough, the Volvo is actually more efficient in front-wheel drive form than that Lincoln MKC, thanks to that brand new family of engines. The Volvo also has more powerful engines available. You'll find a larger cargo area behind the second row seats in the XC60, and we also have included scheduled maintenance for all Volvos in the 2015 and a half model year. Now that being said, the MKC is definitely more nimble than this. It's a decent amount lighter. It's also a little bit fresher on the inside and on the outside. Some people are a little bit put off by Lincoln's latest design language, but I actually find it quite attractive. Lexus's RX crossover is a half step larger than the XC60, and as a result, Lexus's brand new NX crossover is really the true competitor to this particular vehicle. Now the Volvo is $1,000 more expensive than that Lexus, but the Volvo does have a much better infotainment system. In my opinion, it also has, without a doubt, more advanced features than you'll find in Lexus and Forum. As far as gasoline models go, especially in front-wheel drive trim, the Volvo also gets better fuel economy than that Lexus. Now the Lexus counterpoint to those wins on the Volvo side is the Lexus NX 300h Hybrid. It is one of the best fuel economy vehicles in this particular segment, including all those high economy diesels that the Germans have. Now even though it's a hybrid, the NX also slots kind of in the middle of the pack in terms of handling and acceleration ability. If you want to know more about the NX, there is a preview video on my channel, and I'll have a complete review coming up in about a month or so. The Mercedes GLK starts $1,700 more than the XC60. That base engine does produce more power than the XC60's base T5 form as well. However, it's not actually faster in terms of 0 to 60 performance, thanks to the 8-speed automatic we get in this vehicle versus the GLK's 7-speed automatic and the brand new engine that Volvo has under the hood. Of course, the GLK is rear-wheel drive, so it definitely has a rear-wheel drive driving dynamic. It definitely feels a little bit sportier out on the road than the XC60, especially in front-wheel drive format. The T6 is really where the value starts happening in the XC60. You get that 302 horsepower turbocharged and supercharged engine. It will set you back $3,000 more than a base GLK. However, you get more power and you also get $4,500 more standard equipment. And when you start taking a look at the all-wheel drive versions of both this and the GLK, there's relatively little difference in handling. Compared to the Audi Q5, the Volvo is $2,700 less expensive. However, that Q5 is all-wheel drive only. If you want to add all-wheel drive to the Volvo, then that delta actually shrinks a great deal. Now the XC60 does deliver better fuel economy, and it is a little bit fresher on the inside than the current generation Audi Q5. The Q5, however, is due for a redesign for the 2016 model year, so we do expect to see that sometime soon. Even though the XC60 delivers better fuel economy, that Q5 is a slightly better value in base form. And when you take a look at the top end trims of the Volvo XC60, like the version we're taking a look at right here, it does end up a little bit less expensive than a comparably equipped Q5. If you want to get the absolute performance version of the Volvo XC60 that is considerably less expensive than the Audi SQ5, it's also considerably less sporty, doesn't handle quite as well, doesn't accelerate quite as well, but the delta between the two is actually a little bit more surprising than you might think. BMW's X3 will set you back $2,225 more than a base XC60. Now the base XC60 will actually give you better fuel economy than that base X3, even though the X3's fuel economy is excellent. Now a nicely loaded X3 with the 2-liter turbocharged engine versus the similar content in the XC60, you'll actually pay about $5,000 more for that BMW than you will for the Volvo. Now when you compare the 3-liter turbocharged engine in the BMW and the 3-liter turbocharged engine in the Volvo, both all-wheel drive, the Volvo will be about $5,000 less expensive. The handling obviously is still better in the BMW X3, largely down to the better weight balance of the X3, but the handling difference isn't quite as large as you might think. A lot of that comes down to the fact that Volvo put really wide tires on the T6 all-wheel drive. They're definitely wider than you'll find in most versions of that BMW X3, even with the 3-liter turbo. Now, if you load your 3-liter turbo all the way up on both ends, you'll end up spending $7,000 more for the same equipment in the BMW X3 than you will in the XC60. The T6 all-wheel drive version we're taking a look at right here will be a little bit slower to 60 than the BMW X3 xDrive 35i, which is that 3-liter turbocharged version we're talking about. However, that BMW is a little bit slower than Volvo's T6 R-Design all-wheel drive model. But that's not really the takeaway here. The takeaway here is that you can get this T6 all-wheel drive or the T6 front-wheel drive model for about the same price as you can a similarly equipped BMW X3 with their 2-liter turbocharged engine, and these versions will definitely be faster than that base X3, and the handling isn't going to be that far off. Even though the XC60 has been on the market for some time, this is still one of the best rounded luxury crossover vehicles available. This is obviously not as dynamic as entries like the BMW X3, the GLK, or the Macan, but it still delivers exactly what we expect from Volvo. We get very practical cargo management features in the back, a lot of interior room, very comfortable seats, very practical child-friendly features on the inside, as well as very high crash test ratings. Now, in addition to all that, the XC60 is one of the best values in this segment. It's not the best, but it is definitely one of the best, but it also has one of the best fuel economy ratings in this segment, and strangely enough, some of the best performance figures in this segment. All that puts the XC60 high on my recommended shopping list. If you're looking for a luxury crossover in this segment, you do well to put the XC60 on your shopping list. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. I'm Alex Dykes, and this has been the 2015 and a half Volvo XC60. This particular version is the T6 all-wheel drive model. Go ahead and click that subscribe banner at the bottom of your screen so you can be updated on all of my latest videos, and I'll see you next week.